do it. Maybe you weren't here last week. You weren't able to participate. So I'm going to drop that assignment in the chat real quick and switch my slide over here and give everyone a few, like about 2 minutes to get this assignment done. Bear with me as I drop this in the chat. And let me switch my slide here. So I have on this slide, it kind of shows you what to do, but if you'll click into our open source community element repository and search for a topic of interest to you, or maybe it's an area of expertise that you are in, workforce, and you type that in and find a ticket in our open source community right now that interests you, and just be prepared to drop that ticket number or just the topic, the word that you searched in a word cloud here in just a minute. So as you all quickly complete that assignment, I will introduce myself formally. I'm Jackie Hughes. I'm a business analyst with CEDS, and with me today is Dwayne Brown, and he is our open source community lead. And if you didn't join us last week, we do also have this recording available. I sent it out to everyone that was registered, but in case you missed my email, there's the recording, and we will have this posted in the open source community in just a few weeks after next week's final webinar. We'll post all of these in our Gitbook too that we'll talk about today. So we covered what to do last week before you submit your use case by searching our elements page inside CEDS, and we also discussed the components of introducing your use case or that need or challenge that you have. And Dwayne spoke to using the community for your help, that it's okay, you might not know everything you need, all the information involved in what you need, but just submit that first use case. Tell us what you need, be prepared to do the work on the ticket, but use the community for support. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today, is using the community to form a work group as you work on a use case. So for our agenda today, we are going to dive into building out that use case, how to research existing standards, and then what happens when you when you're breaking new ground, meaning what happens after you look through all those existing standards and what you need isn't there. And Dwayne's going to talk about that process. It's a simple process of forming a work group and continuing to research as you work towards that formal proposal. So hopefully I gave everyone enough time to find something, an area of interest in the open source community for your homework assignment. So I'm going to bring up a word cloud now for you to type in the number that the issue number or the word that was, oh, and Doris, you already did it in there. So give me 1 second to launch this. Hopefully you all see it. So, and it's also in the chat if it's not appearing on your screen, or it should be in the chat. So share the open source community ticket number or topic that sparked your interest if you completed the homework. All right, I see 4:30 on my screen. And like, thanks, 672. Advax, tribal, issue 81. We have 6 responses. I'll give you more seconds to. Non-traditional fields, okay. Credentials, great. Awesome. Leave it up for more seconds. Lunch.
Is lunch a topic, or is
That's what
is that the right time?
Sit and ticket in the open source community. All right, well, thank y'all for participating. And we're going to capture a screenshot of that, and we might have some time at the end to talk about lunch as a topic. Thank you, Robin, to talk about. So I'm going to close that now. And thank you. Okay, so before I officially hand it over to Dwayne, we want to make sure everyone has access to a new resource for CEDS, which is called our CEDS Open Source Community Gitbook. Dwayne's going to drop the link in the chat, but I just want to take a minute or two today to show you all how to navigate the Gitbook. As I said, it's new, so we new to Dwayne and I too. Over the past, we've had about a few weeks to look over it, but this is going to be a great resource for you all as you and your organization submit tickets to the open source community and you need to reference, what do I do again? Where's that template I needed? And that's all in here for you. So thank you, Dwayne, for dropping the link. So when you click on the link, it's going to take you to the introduction to CEDS page. That's just our landing page. But what you want is to navigate to the left-hand side to, and sorry, I should have had this closed, the open source community here. And if you click the arrow, you see our different repositories. So Dwayne touched quickly last week on, we do have a data warehouse, open source community, IDS store, but we're focusing on the element repository. So if you click into the element repository, it's going to take you to just our kind of overview and getting started. And I want to point out our getting started because this talks about the 4 steps it takes to get your proposal through the open source community and onto our CEDS page. So last week we talked about step 1, which is what to do before you submit your use case. And then today we're talking about that development and how to submit your use case. And we're kind of touching on creating your proposal, but then next week is that final step of create and submit your formal proposal, and then what happens during the community review process. So I just wanted to point this out to you all. But if you'll navigate back over to the left under element repository to influencing the CEDS standard. This just shows you how to request the changes you need. There's a nice little graphic here that kind of helps you know, okay, what's the process and how do I move through it? And over here on the right-hand side, it says on this page. So you have before you submit a use case, and this is exactly what Dwayne covered last week. He walked you through this. We've added the images here in case you forgot, and it shows you how to submit the use case, which we covered last week. And then it also brings you to this week's, which is work groups. We're going to talk about forming a work group. And Dwayne's going to touch and start on today about creating and submitting a proposal, how you need to have a template. He's going to show you all these links right here on how to look at existing standards to see if your use case exists in another standard body. When you're doing that, you need to document what you're researching, where you've looked, so that the community knows once you submit that information to your ticket. So a great place, personally, this is what I like to do when I go to work on a ticket in the open source community, is I'll click on modified element template or new element template, which Dwayne will touch on in just a little bit. But this is just a document to keep all of your research. And there's a section in your template that tells you where to put that research. Also, when you go to submit your formal proposal, you will need to submit one of these templates. So to me, it makes sense to go ahead and start with it. If you start researching and you think it's a new element and then you go, oh, wow, I actually did end up finding it, then you click inside modified element. It's pretty easy to switch back and forth between the two. So that was kind of a quick overview of the Gitbook and some key points. So again, I'm over here under influencing the CEDS standards, create and submit a proposal. And these are the links that will take you to all the existing standards that Dwayne is going to cover. So Dwayne, I will hand it over to Dwayne to now talk about how to research those other standards bodies. Thanks, Dwayne.
Thanks, Jackie. So last week we talked about searching CEDS to ensure that the element or some other way of getting to that element inside of CEDS or some way that data is not inside of CEDS already. Today we're going to assume that the search has been completed. You've looked in CEDS, you've looked in every different way you possibly could, and you've turned up nothing. That means you need to add something new to CEDS, whether that is a new element to CEDS or a new option set. We need to make a change to something within CEDS. An existing element to accommodate the need for the use case, a brand new element, whatever it is, it's something new. So as we talked about last week, you created the use case. Now what? What happens at this point? It's actually time to do some research. The first thing to do is to create a place where you can track your findings. As Jackie mentioned, the templates are there. These are what you're actually going to be submitting to CEDS with the proposal information inside of it. So it makes sense to just go ahead and begin documenting there. So you have everything in that particular location. You'll document your findings there. If you will be doing a brand new element, use the new element template. If you're doing a modified element, use the modified element template. It just makes it easier as we start to prepare the releases for CEDS, having the previous information in there if it's a modified element. So now in CEDS, what we don't want to do is reinvent something that has already been invented by another open standard. So just like we sent you to the CEDS page to verify that it doesn't exist in CEDS before you create something new, what we want to do is we want to make sure it doesn't already exist in another standard before we create something new. So if it can be found in another standard, good news, you have just one, reduced your workload, and two, you're going to accomplish growing standards closer and closer to each other rather than further apart. So that's a great place to look. The list in Gitbook that we have there is not an exhaustive list by any means of other standards. It's just some that we review when we're working on use case tickets. So depending on the use case, there are other standards that could be reviewed. What we need to avoid is copying and using any proprietary standards. So watching out for that, we have to be careful looking at licensing for the various different standards. If it's fully open like CEDS, do whatever you want to with the CEDS element. You want to share it over here, you want to use it in this system, you can do whatever you want. You want to repeat it, completely open. So we're looking for those open standards if we're going to be copying directly. If they're not open or they're more proprietary in nature, then they can help inform the proposal, but just as we had to do in high school, put it in your own words. Or maybe get ChatGPT to put it in your own words for you. Whatever you have to do to make sure that it is not something that we are taking, and we can't be taking that. So researching those examples. For our examples today, we're actually going to be using two existing use cases, and those are issues 558, which are expanding the option set for high school diploma distinction type, and then also 715, which is a neglected and delinquent program types. And if Jackie could put those in there, we'll get to taking a look at those. The first thing I want to do, though, is come over to the standards themselves in the Gitbook page. Whoop, there we go. Source community. And then influencing the CEDS standard. There we go. Scrolling down to the various different standards themselves. I won't be going through all of these today. Some are a little harder, but what you need to know about this is searching other standards is an art form. It's unique to each standard, how they have you search, how they store it. Some are more technical standards, and it's a little more difficult to dig in and take a look at exactly what they have. Others have the ability to search through, to type in keywords and be able to search for things. So some are going to be easier than others to actually look at. Don't be overwhelmed by this. As you're trying to research your use case, you just do your best. You may not catch everything, but our goal is to try to do due diligence to make sure that we actually have looked at other standards and ideally not reinvent something. So also the other thing to do is consider the context. So you're searching for something in post-secondary, right? If you're searching for something post-secondary and it's primarily a post-secondary thing, you probably want to go to the Post-Secondary Electronic Standards Council and take a look there. That would make sense. Are you searching for something in K-12? Well, if K-12, probably you're going to want to look at A4L and EdFi and inside of one EdTech, right? If you're looking for something related to credentials, you might be able to find some things in these, as there are credentialings that take place, but really the expert on credentials is going to be over here at Credential Engine. So the credential definition transparency language is where you're going to want to take a look. There are other standards that aren't even listed on here. For instance, if you were looking at something related to justice, then you probably want to look at NIEM, the National Information Exchange Model. If you were looking something related to healthcare, probably going to want to look at their fire standards that healthcare has. So a lot of this can be done as you really just Google searches, but we provided some links here. If you happen to know of existing standards, you can utilize those and take a look at those. But we are going to start off with searching for our ticket. We're going to go to issue 558. So let me take us there. As you can see, this one is in development. We've been working on this particular issue. And there we go. She has the link inside of there. So let's take a look at what's been asked for. So we have a request from Mississippi. Mississippi offers 3 diploma endorsements: academic, distinguished academic, and career and technical, that all have requirements above the standard diploma requirements. CEDS already has an option for distinguished, so requesting to add the other 2 options. And this is looking at a request to expand high school diploma distinction. So what we have in this is a modified element, right? So let's go take a look at high school diploma distinction type. We're beginning our research here. We're going to go through the search here. And I don't want that much. So as a reminder, we have this advanced search. Definitions, option sets. I know this is in the title. So nice to use this. High school diploma distinction type. So we see we have 6 options that exist presently: minimum, recommended, distinguished. That was one that was called out in the ticket. Open enrollment, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. We also have the high school diploma type, which gives information as far as the type of diploma, but these are distinction of diploma or credential that is awarded to a person in recognition of their completion of the curricular requirements. So something that's distinct about the diploma. Coming back over into the ticket, Mississippi offers 3 things: academic, distinguished, and career and technical. How do we start to make sense of this? Well, first thing we want to do is explore other standards. Maybe somebody already has something and they've already done the work on this. Let's go take a look. So I'm going to jump over here. We're going to go take a look at EdFi first and jump into the EdFi handbook. And they have a search. There's different versions of this. I'm actually in the pre-2 version 5, which is not out yet, but it is one of the most recent, it's development draft. So I want to take a look at kind of what they're doing presently. So I'm just going to go in here and I want something related to diploma. Filters it down for me. We have diploma itself. We have an award date. That's not really what I'm looking for. Another date, a description of the diploma. And then we have diploma level and diploma type. Those look interesting. I could click on diploma. It's going to take me in to see the entire object for diploma. And I have all this information here. And it also includes the diploma level and the diploma type. So let's take a look at what diploma level actually is. The level of a diploma credential that is awarded to a student in recognition of completion of the curricular requirements. That sounds an awful lot. The distinction of the diploma that's awarded to a student in recognition of completion of the curricular requirements. I think we may have something similar here. So the diploma level, I go in, I take a look, they have that. They refer you then to the descriptors, right? You have a diploma level descriptor. They keep their descriptors over in another location on the GitHub site for EdFi, and you're able to scroll down and take a look at the descriptors. So we want to see is, do they have anything additional? Have EdFi states or stakeholders worked on something related to distinctions inside of the diploma level? So we jump over here, we take a look at the diploma level descriptor. This is where it's a little more technical in nature, but you can still take a look through what they have. So they have cum laude, distinguished, magna cum laude, minimum, open enrollment, recommended, and summa cum laude. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So cum laude, distinguished, magna cum laude, minimum, open enrollment, recommended, summa cum laude. If we come back over to CEDS, we have magna cum laude and summa cum laude. We also have open enrollment, distinguished, recommended, minimum. Turns out they have one more item over inside of there, which is cum laude. But none of those actually are going to help us with our particular use case, right? We need academic, distinguished, academic, and career and technical. Distinguished we can use, that's already indicated in the ticket, but academic and career and technical, we're not able to find that inside of there. Okay, so if you did a more exhaustive search, you would discover we don't have that inside of EdFi presently. We don't have it in CEDS, we already know that. let's go take a look at maybe another standard. So we're going to jump out here. We're going to go over to CIF, take a look at that standard. For them, you drop down, take a look. These are the various different versions that they have. We're specifically wanting to look at the data model, the North American data model 4.3. And it's easiest, in my opinion, I could be wrong, to go into the table of contents and to look at an index of objects. And here is kind of a grouping of various different things. So inside of each of these, you're going to find elements. These are the objects that are going to carry elements across the wire. So you have to take a look, read through, and kind of look for what it is that you might be looking for. In this particular one, I'm going to go down and look at student academic record. And as I said, it's an art form. Over time, you start to learn the other standards and what they have available. So I'm going to take a look at student academic record. And in student academic record, we have various different things. We have performance history, performance summaries, enrollment history. So a lot of different information, activity award history. That sounds interesting. We're going to take a look, though, at the performance summary. See what we can find inside of here. Performance summary. Okay, we have conveys a cumulative summary of students. That just has a summary type. You know what? Maybe we actually want the activity award history, because we're really talking about awards here. So we're just going to dig in and go over to the activity award, whatever that's called, activity award history type. We're going to jump down here and see what we can find in here. Okay, we have some things related to diploma. So we have diploma credentials, honors code. We have diploma credential honors description, honors information code. I think I'm going to take a look at this honors code, see what we end up with here. We end up with a CEDS element. It's a normalized string, but actually CIF is pointing you over to a CEDS element. So if we take a look at what this one has, can actually take that link straight over to CEDS. Okay, that's recognition for participation in performance or activity. That's not quite what we're looking for. Jump back over. Ooh, scroll back up. Oh, this is interesting down here. The designation of the type of distinctions or other honors earned by a student awarded to the student. Magna, summa, scholarship, etc. But we're seeing in here just honors awards, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. Another thing we can do is take a look here and just do a quick search for diploma. Graduation diploma type. We already knew that one. Here we have something, activity award diploma credential honors type. Is this the nature of a recognition given to a student for successful completion? Okay, let's take a look and see what they're referring to here. We jump over and we're going to take a look at what they're referring to here. This looks familiar. Minimum recommended distinguished open enrollment. So we have CIF and their activity award diploma credential honors type code. So these are honors supplied to a diploma. They're actually referring you back to CEDS to go and get the option set that exists here. Okay, so that ended up, we can't find anything in particular in this standard. And as I've looked through other standards as well, we were not able to find anything directly related to academic or career technical that existed inside of a standard as it relates to an extension or an endorsement of a diploma type. So that's searching through the various different standards. And you could go through and exhaust it. You could look through post-secondary. You could look through various other ones, looking through schema.org. We were actually able to do a search in here and try to find things related to that specifically. You're able to look through and find educational occupational credential. That's occupational. Going straight into that credential awarded.
Hey Dwayne, sorry I'm interrupting you. Doris has asked, the links that we have in the Gitbook, are all of those open sources? Which is a great question.
I would not assume they are.
Okay.
No. Check the licensing. EdFi, A4L, you're good to go. PESC, you're good to go. schema.org, you're good to go. Some of the other ones, it's best to document inside of your proposal that you pulled directly from this location and possibly do some in your own words, or reference that, and then we can check with that organization. So a lot of times we just check with the organization. Is it okay if we take what you have and add that into CEDS? I don't think it's ever been no. So for the most part, but that's where we need that documentation as we review your proposal. So if you do find something that works perfectly from another standard, document that in there, propose that we go directly with what they have and bring that over to us. And then we'll review that, and then we'll talk to that standard to make sure it's okay if we take it directly as it is. So that's always the best. Okay, so we were not able to find anything related to high school distinction types as far as the career and technical that we were looking for. Now, there are also, in addition to these, there are other federal standards that are useful to use. And a lot of these are related to reporting, right? So really reporting standards. They're essential to look at. These include things like EdFacts, IPEDS, CRDC. So EdFacts is at the SCA level, IPEDS for post-secondary, CRDC at the local education agency or district level. Basically, any kind of reporting that has to be done consistently across states, you're looking at standard, right? Because they have to craft their data into that type of standard in order to do the reporting. So this creates standardization. In our diploma example still though yet, we were not aware of any type of reporting, or we're not able to find any type of reporting that was done at the diploma endorsement level. We did find some reporting obviously at the diploma level and the types of diploma, but we were not able to find anything at the endorsement level in that particular instance. We're going to jump off of diploma for a second, and we're going to move over to our neglected and delinquent ticket. And let me jump into here. So coming off of this one, we'll come back to that since we got stuck. And this one, we're like, I can't find anything in another standard. So that's going to require a work group. Neglected delinquent, we're going to take a look at. And type in the D. There we go. On this particular one, again, we're looking at 2 new elements, neglected delinquent program types, delinquent program types. They even have options and descriptions available inside the ticket that they want to add. And this is related to ticket 682. And I don't see anything in here that relates it to a particular EdFacts file, but we know it is because they're listing EdFacts. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to EdFacts and take a look and see what they have. We're going to go into here. I know for certain it's not in that location yet, so I'm going to go to 2223, which is the most recent, and I'm going to look through here and try to find things related to neglected or delinquent. You can open up multiple file specs. If you're familiar with EdFacts, that's something you can, you know where you're headed, but if you're not, you can look at the titles here and try to find exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to open up 119. And then I'm going to take a look inside of here and see what we end up with. A lot of times for EdFacts files, they have all of their different option sets and codes listed in tables. So you can scroll down and take a look. And here we see we have neglected programs. We have a code already supplied to us, which is something we'll need in CEDS. We have a description. We also have comments that actually describe what it is that we're looking at here that we could use towards making a definition. So we have neglected programs, we have delinquent programs with just about everything we would actually need for this particular use case. All right, so what we're going to do here is take a look at our modified template, our new template, sorry, and kind of get an idea. We won't go over this in great detail, but you can see how we took the option code directly. This is for the delinquent program type. We took the description directly. And then we were able to then use the comments to actually build out various different definitions for what is meant by that actual description inside of there. And then we reference at the bottom the EdFacts file spec 119 from which we pulled that particular element. So this is an easier one because you don't really have to vet that. It's a federal collection. All states, or really on this, all local education agencies have to be able to indicate these program types at the student level. So as programs that students are enrolled in, because it's every LEA this is a standard we can adopt directly from EdFax. It definitely meets the requirements of at least 3 stakeholder agencies because it's every LEA, right? Every LEA, every state is going to have to be able to get to at least this level to be able to do the reporting. Now, sometimes the LEA gets to that level and then they report the aggregate numbers up to the state. But even still, the state had to inform and EdFax had to inform that LEA for how they are to do the aggregation at these various different levels. So we know that that is common across. If you find something that works for you in an existing standard, so had we found something over in EdFi or SIF or schema.org or somewhere else, we had found something that worked for us for high school distinction type, you can begin creating the proposal right away. There's no need to go at the work group level because it's already been vetted by another stakeholder agency or another stakeholder organization who's gone through the process of adding that in. Ideally, you can craft the element name and if needed, the options exactly as written in the other standard because that's how they've expressed it. So if we can bring it over exactly as written, that's great. Sometimes that doesn't work though. So we have CEDS naming conventions that we're going to talk about in the next work group session or the next OSC training. And those naming conventions have to be followed. And so sometimes we have to rename the element. Sometimes they don't provide a definition or it's just a little short definition and we need something a little more clear from a CEDS perspective. And so you either have to provide a definition or add to it. But ideally, as close as we can stick to that is best. So if an element does exist in another standard, you can document that in the proposal, submit that to the CEDS team, your work is done, right? Assuming it doesn't come back to you and say, we have to make a couple tweaks. But it's always good when you can find another standard. If it's already been vetted through multiple stakeholders who make it into that standard, no need for a work group. Going back now over to our other ticket. Once you've exhausted the standard search for like the high school diploma distinction type, it's time for a work group, right? That involves bringing together stakeholders who understand the data you're talking about. And it also involves a great resource, search engines, to see what else is out there in the world and can help inform what others are doing. So we're going to talk now about forming the work group. We're going to jump over to the Getbook page. Here. And go to forming a work group. So without reading straight through this, the purpose is really you want not like-minded, you actually probably want some disagreement, but you want individuals who understand this data use case and deal with this type of data to meet with you, to talk about this, to discuss. You're going to wrestle through these conversations, right, to actually go through the process of discussing the various different things that are going to take that you're going to actually be crafting. So we require a work group so that the proposal is informed by at least 3 separate stakeholder organizations. That's an important distinction to note. So here's the thing. There's a chance you're going to get 2 organizations to agree right away, but darn that third one if they don't have a different opinion, which is good. So the type of back and forth is healthy for the standard and ultimately what's actually going to be proposed. And we do have the rubric. I'm going the wrong way. So in case it's not clear, if you're going to need those opinions or not, it's a very simple rubric. Is it in an existing standard? No. Guess what? A work group is required. So a new element that's proposed that's not an existing standard, or an option set change is proposed that's not an existing standard, you're going to need a work group. We do have bug fixes occasionally with inside of CEDS where you're going to have to do just add a comma, correct a misspelling. Those sort of things don't require a work group because they're pretty obvious, but the other ones do require a work group. So a work group, now to define what a work group is, it doesn't require necessarily months worth of meetings. It may be resolvable in one meeting. So you could meet together on a simple ticket, come up with a solution, propose that to CEDS. You only met one time. You could even technically meet through email, right? You could work together with a couple other organizations or more than that and go back and forth through email and actually come up with some type of solution for the ticket. And if all of you are in agreement, you create the proposal and you submit that. It all depends on the complexity of the use case or the multiple use cases that you are. Maybe involving a whole brand new domain within CEDS. This is going to take some time. So it could just be a one-off, adding some elements in, could be major, could be minor. How you actually advertise the work group, couple ways. So let's say you do need to form a work group. You're like, how do I even reach out? How do I get a hold of somebody? How do I even begin the process? I know you all in states have access to other people. You attend conferences, you have different meetings and things. So great way to reach out to other individuals who understand the use case. You may have better access, but if you need advertisement, there are ways to do that. So the first thing you can do is you can actually use the ticket itself. So down here, you can make a comment. I'd like to form a work group. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer or want to be part of this particular use case, right? So if we take a look at what we had here, we have the different things that came up, the OSC ticker numbers, right? Anybody interested in 730? So if you wanted to take on 734, you can post inside of the comments, I want to take on this particular ticket. I'm looking for anybody else that wants to help me. Once you've scheduled like dates and times, you can also post those inside the ticket and say, hey, at this particular date, at this particular time, at this particular meeting location, we're gonna have a conversation about that. So 734, 430, tribal, whatever it is, whatever that ticket is, you can post inside of here that you actually want to begin some work on that particular ticket and you're looking for interested individuals. Technically, just posting the ticket is saying, I'm looking for like-minded individuals to actually talk with me about this particular ticket. So that's one place that we can do advertisements. You can also contact the CEDS team. That's us. You can do that directly if you happen to have our email. You can also just go into contact us here at CEDS and just know that you have a particular thing that you want to post at a particular time. And we would take that then and post it over here on our communities page. So all of our work groups, any events that we hold in CEDS, all are open for anyone to attend, and they all exist on our calendar. So you can see here, we have a staff employee work group. It just met on the 4th. It's meeting again on the 18th. That's discussing things related to staff, employees, jobs, job positions. We have workforce standards committee discussing things related to workforce. There's an EdFax one. We had a stakeholder use case meeting here that actually goes through some of the tickets that different states have opened inside of CEDS, just discussing random topics once a month related to the tickets that are in there. So anything that you need to post, we can do that there. We also have every Monday, so the next one coming up is on November 6th. We have our open source monthly meeting. And on that one, the purpose of that meeting is not to discuss the tickets, but to let you know all of the discussions taking place. So we would post there. We would have the meeting, would let everybody know who attends the call. So-and-so wants to work on ticket 734 and they want to set up a meeting time. If there's any interest, this is the meeting time that's already been set up, or reach out to them to actually go through and begin discussing those. We can also announce it through newsletters. We can announce it through other emails. We can announce it through social media that we have through CEDS. So trying to reach the broader CEDS community, you can do through us. So let's pretend you have a work group announced. The work has begun. Where do you go now? We're going back to this high school distinction type question, right? Participants in the work group can naturally share what their organization does. That's some of the most valuable information that you can gain, is having somebody on the call who understands the topic and they share what their organization is doing, because it's going to be slightly different than what your organization is doing. So they share that related to the use case, but then don't leave out the idea of using search engines and even AI tools to help you research the use case and provide diversification of ideas. So the more diverse the ideas that you are able to bring in, the easier it's going to be to craft something that's actually going to be common. So for our high school diploma distinction type, we engaged various different search engines. Let me bring this back up. Here we go. To find out what others are doing. And here's what we found. We found some consistency. We also found great variance, which is one of the harder tickets that we've had to work through in trying to discover if there is anything really common out there. We did discover what was interesting as we began to look at endorsements and things added to diplomas or seals. We did discover that most states have what's called a seal of biliteracy, an endorsement added to diplomas. It's an organization. It's a consistent endorsement across many different states. That isn't even part of our use case, but in doing so, we discovered something that's actually common and across many states. And so since it is common, it's tied to this element, it may make sense once we do the proposal to go ahead and include that in the actual high school diploma distinction type seal of biliteracy. We also discovered that the career and technical endorsement is common among states, though the requirements for achieving it may vary slightly. It may also make sense to include that one in the high school diploma distinction type. The solution for academic was varied greatly. We determined that endorsements vary greatly in what they're called, the requirements that allow them to be rewarded. One state may have 2 levels, another may have 3 levels, another may have 4 levels. They may not even have levels. They may have different categories instead of levels. And whatever qualifies you for 1, 2, 3 varies: extra credits, projects, participation, extracurricular activities, advanced courses, etc. Through that research, we realized it would be difficult, but you can see in the document as we went through, we just began documenting things, right? What does the Virginia Department of Education have? So we were able to put this inside of here. Diploma seals. Scroll down. We have the governor's seal. We have the Board of Education seal. Hey, look, the career and technical education seal. That's common. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics seal. So you can see there's not even levels here. There's actually different categories. Seal of biliteracy. This actually is the one that's actually common among them. Science and environment, other diplomas and seals. Jump back in over here. And we could go take a look. We did discover that EdFi has their diploma type descriptor, a thing related to career and technical education, which we also have in CEDS as far as a diploma type, but not an endorsement or a seal that's added actually to that. So we could go take a look at North Carolina. North Carolina has a college endorsement, college UNC endorsement, a North Carolina academic scholars endorsement, global languages endorsement. And let's just go take a look at one more as we search through. Mississippi being the original one. You can scroll down here. This is where we kind of get into the 3 different types. They have a traditional diploma with a career and technical endorsement. This is the academic endorsement. This is the distinguished academic. And you can see there's different requirements: earn 26 credits, overall GPA 25, 2 elective courses, but various different requirements that actually fall into what makes up that type. So through the research, we realized it's actually going to be difficult to standardize this type of award given to the student. We thought about the fact that CEDS actually has a credentials domain, though. So in going through this process, we jump back over here and we said, okay, so I don't think we're going to be able to standardize the actual seals themselves or the actual endorsements, because they vary so greatly and the definitions of each of them vary distinctly. So what can we do? Because this is, while they are different, they are still common. As we looked at the different states, everyone commonly has these endorsements or seals that are added to diplomas. So how do we stay common, stay standard, and yet still find a way to express something that is so variant? So we looked at our credentials domain. And the way credentials domains is actually just a construct that holds various different definitions of credentials that could then be awarded. So in here, the title, the description, information about that particular, that can be this. It's an academic endorsement, right? And then the description, it earns 26 credits, the different requirements. The requirements could actually be put over into our competencies domain, various different things that you'd have to have. But jumping back over into here, this defines a credential. It doesn't tell you anything. They're not standard credentials. It just defines the credential. And then it also has who issued the credential. So we actually have the issuer of the credential. An organization is the one who actually defines it and issues it. And then the student can be awarded that credential. The only thing we saw in this one was, okay, so did we standardize this at all? We have an academic, right? This is what they needed. We need to somehow be able to say academic endorsement and yet mean all of this added to our credential. The one thing that we looked at that we actually do need to add into CEDS that will provide some level of standardization is the credential type. Is it a certification, endorsement, a licensure, other registration? Could we be more specific in this and actually call out that the type of credential that you're looking at, if you were to see the data around it, is a high school diploma distinction type or a high school diploma endorsement type? We're still working through the language as far as adding that into the credential type. But this gives us standardization. Here is a credential that's been awarded to the student. What kind of credential is it? It's a high school diploma distinction, right? Then you know when you're looking at the credential exactly what you're looking at. And then you can see the requirements and the various different things, but that it's been added to a particular diploma. This provides flexibility inside of CEDS. So ideally, we try to create elements as rigid and as standard as possible. Seal of biliteracy, that appears to be standards. Some of the other endorsements, not as much. So for where it seems that the standardization at this point, in this time at least, might not be possible, we do have the constructs in credentials that allow for flexibility, such as in the credentials domain. At the very least, we can communicate that the academic endorsement is a high school diploma endorsement through the use of this. So what to know? Every use case is going to be different. Some are going to be really straightforward and relatively easy to get to the proposal stage, especially if you have an existing standard that's already doing that. Others are going to require multiple conversations with other stakeholders, and they're going to require research and maybe multiple meetings. What we see in the high school diploma endorsement category is that it's common. Note the keyword common for states to have these type of additions to diplomas, but the addition themselves, not common. So as you're working through different tickets, how do you build into CEDS a standard way to do the common and yet allow flexibility in what is not common? And that's always the challenge for every use case. As you go through the various different use cases, you're actually going to become an expert in that field. That happens as we go through the different use cases. I've learned way more than I probably want to know about high school endorsements, but I know more than I did before, which will help inform me as I'm looking at different elements and different things that maybe relate in a new way next time. After you've researched and discussed, you've wrestled with the topic, then it's time to build the actual proposal. And we're going to talk about that process next week in the next OSC training session. Crafting the standard definition, crafting the standard element name, and then determining where it fits inside the model and then how it relates to other elements inside of CEDS. Okay, now we're going to turn it back over to Jackie, who is going to talk a little bit about the homework that you will have.
Forgot to take myself off mute. So thank you, Dwayne. So yes, we have another little homework assignment for you all to do. So those ticket numbers and topics of interest that you dropped into the chat, we'd like for you to take some time to look up at least 2 of the standards that we showed you that are listed in the Get book and do some research. So kind of like Dwayne showed today, click into EdFi. If your topic was lunch, click through their EdFi standards, A4Ls, or any of the standards bodies that were listed there and see what you can find related to your topic of interest. And then just come back ready to tell us, like, did you find it there? Did it lead you back to CEDS? Did you, what were some challenges? Was it just really, one of your challenges could be, this was for me when I first started learning about the open source community in CEDS, was just figuring out how, and Dwayne touched on this, different standards bodies list their elements, and that can be part of the challenge too. So just we'd love to hear from you next week and hope that you'll join us as we talk about creating the proposal. But questions for you all, we have time for questions. If you want us to talk about the topic that you dropped into the chat, please do that at this time. I will drop the registration while I give you guys a second to ask any questions you might have. I just dropped the link to webinar 3 next week, creating the proposals. Okay. Well, we will be here. If you have questions you want to ask,
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so Dwayne took a lot of avenues, looking for, what it was that we were searching for. Is there some kind of guideline or document that we can, take example of, where all he took us, so that when we are doing our homework, we can go and look?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have the Git book. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull that up on the screen here. So that's where the Git book should flow in the sense of where you start with submitting your use case, which we did last week, creating your issue, and then determining if you need a work group. So it shows you how to search our existing standard inside CEDS for whatever element it might be that you're looking for.
I get that part, but then he went off to other sites.
Right. So the other sites are all listed under create and submit proposal in the Git book. So all of these are links that take you to where Dwayne was. So he was in the EdFi, A4L, and searching to see if it existed in another standards body. And then go ahead, Dwayne.
And I will say, this page is new that we have listed here. It's our first attempt to help you go through that process. So definitely tell us what's wrong with it. Critique it. Tell us you want this instead, or you need this resource, and we will get those kind of things added. So, and that's part of like the homework for like next. What challenge did you ran into? Is this page the challenge? Is you didn't have it, like whatever that is. Those are the kind of things that we want to add in to create that prescriptive process for you to be able to go through. So absolutely tell us what we don't have so that we can get that added in.
Did that answer your question? Or
it did. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
The more prescriptive we can make it, the easier it'll be. But Google's my favorite friend. And ChatGPT is slowly becoming a good friend as well. I'll just give you a quick example. We're working on some accommodations, definitions for assessment accommodations. I'm just like, hey, give me a definition for this ChatGPT. That's a pretty good definition, actually. So very, very useful. Other questions?
Okay. Well, we can hang back. There's 5 minutes left. So if you have another question you want to ask, we will be here. If not, we appreciate you joining us today and look forward to seeing you next week, and come ready to share the challenges you faced. Thanks so much.